Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, Marnie and Duane.
Hello.
Hey.
Thank you. Hi.
Hey, I am so happy to have both of you on as experts on this topic that definitely has come up with our adult chair family for sure over the years, which is betrayal and trauma. And you guys are covering both and putting it in one nice, neat little package, betrayal trauma. So thank you. I mean, the work, I've done a little bit of background searching on you guys, and the work you're doing is incredible. So thank you for what you're doing. Really. The world needs you.
Michelle.
Yeah, the world needs you guys. So thank you. So I don't know who wants to start, but who would like to just tell us what the heck is betrayal trauma?
Go, Marnie.
Okay, I'll go for it.
Go, Marnie.
All right. Well, betrayal trauma can apply to all sorts of different relationships. It can happen in the context of any relationship, right? Any person in a relationship can betray another. But what Duane and I specialize in and focus on in our work is intimate betrayal. So betrayal in the context of an intimate relationship, either a marriage or a partnership where there's an expectation of monogamy and safety. And so that's what we're referring to is a betrayal. It's usually a sexual and or relational betrayal in a significant intimate relationship.
So you guys talk a lot about getting the right support if you've had betrayal trauma. Why do we need support? Like, what about just reading like a really good book on this topic? Like, what kind of support are you talking about? And how do we overcome? Because you know what? Over my almost now 30 years as a therapist, the one thing that people have said over the years is, I'll never trust them again. You know, I'm just not going to trust them ever again. I don't know. I'll never get over this. I'm not going to move on. So I can only imagine, you know, you guys hear that all the time. When there's betrayal, how do you, I know I just asked 3 questions in one. let me back up.
Totally okay.
Let me back up.
Why do you need support?
Yeah. Why do we need support? Because I'm thinking, wow, okay. Yeah. So let's go there first, but I do want to talk about trust after we go through that one, but tell us about support. Why is that so important?
Well, I'll take that one. I think when we begin to look at betrayal trauma, we're looking, especially what Marnie said earlier, intimate betrayal trauma. We're talking about a lot of complex systems in the brain. We're talking about attachment. We're talking about where we are in this life. Mm-hmm. And so it gets really complex really fast. And so a person who's going through that can actually go into PTSD and have PTSD-like symptoms, and they need the support that will help them in a way that understands that, right? For a lot of times, betrayal trauma has really been underappreciated. So when a partner who's been betrayed comes in for help, the clinician and meaning well, I don't think anybody means well, they don't understand the complexities of that betrayal trauma and actually can end up causing more trauma for the partner, especially in the area of addiction treatment.
Mm.
And I'd like to add that particularly with sexual or relational betrayal, the partner really needs the extra support to your question, because oftentimes, as opposed to alcohol addiction or drug addiction, which of course is not pleasant, but people can talk about that with a lot less shame because it's way more common, right, in our society. Mm-hmm. But with sex addiction, there's a lot of shame and stigma attached to it. So partners often can't tell their closest friends and family. right? If they do, in fact, I have a client right now who told her friends, and she is struggling because she wants to make the relationship work, and her friends are all saying leave, and there's no compassion around her choice to try to heal the relationship. So having support from other people that are going through this, getting into group therapy, is really, really crucial for partners who've been betrayed.
I would think too, there, like you said, the shame. I just wrote down the word, like, people are embarrassed. Like, I would be so embarrassed, who do you tell? And so I would think I might want to go through it on my own. I'm just not going to tell anybody, I'm just going to see if I can get this relationship back on track. I'm just going to keep it to myself, but that would be so hard. And then when you finally tell your friends and they're telling you to do the thing you might not want to do, so you really need, then, would you guys recommend like outside support, like you said, like support groups? How would someone find a support group? What kind of support groups? Where do they go to look?
Right. Well, I want to go back a little bit just to kind of really frame how impactful betrayal trauma is, because like you said, you have this thing, you're embarrassed, but at the same time, when intimate relationships are betrayed, it impacts the primary feeling of safety that a person has in their life structure, right? So it's not just that I've been hurt by this person. My whole sense of being in the world has been devastated. So what happens is that partners will have what I said earlier, like these PTSD symptoms. So they'll have flashbacks, nightmares, a lot of overwhelming stuff. So not only are they dealing with that maybe that shame around this issue, they're now dealing with a nervous system that is, if you want to call it kind of off the rails, and PTSD. And if they don't understand that, they themselves can feel like they're going crazy. In fact, many partners, that's what they say. I feel like I'm going crazy. I can't stop thinking about this.
Yeah,
I'm
obsessed.
checking everything. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this. I'm asking my partner the same question. Where were you on June 5th at 3 p.m., and I can't stop dreaming about it. I can't stop thinking about it. So those symptoms in and of themselves have to be treated. And that's where getting really good help and professional help comes in, because if you don't understand your nervous system, you don't know what's going on. And that in and of itself feels overwhelming.
Yeah. And you said safety and trust, which goes back to the question I'd asked before, like, can people rebuild trust again when they have experienced betrayal trauma?
I will be happy to, I'm happy to answer that. I feel badly because what Duane said was so important. And then I think we also didn't answer the question about the support. You'd asked, where do people find the support?
Yeah.
And so just to address that quickly, there are, if you put in betrayal trauma these days, like in a Google search, you're going to find a lot of information and a lot of resources. And there's two specific organizations that I would mention that people can go to online and get referrals in their, like where they live. One is called APSATS, APSATS. It stands for the Association of Partners of Trauma. Wait, what is it? The Association of Partners of Sex Addicts Trauma Specialists.
Ooh, good.
And then the other organization is IATAP. They are great. I was actually on the board of APSATS when the organization started up, and they do incredible work training other clinicians and coaches to work specifically from this partner trauma model, this betrayal trauma model. So they're doing fabulous work. And then the other organization is called IATAP, and that is the International Association of Trauma and Addiction Professionals. And Duane and I actually got certified as sex addiction therapists through IATAP. And that organization also has a website that anybody can go and visit. And if you put in your zip code or city, state, that kind of thing, you can find local resources. And then Duane and I actually have a coaching business called Helping Couples Heal. And we are doing a lot of groups for anybody all over the country, actually all over the world. So if people are interested in learning about our groups, they can also find that at our website, which is Helping Couples Heal.
I was going to ask you, are these first two places that you mentioned, is that international? Those are international agencies, or is that just the United States? It's international? Great. Perfect. And we'll put all of this in the show notes. Thank you for bringing that up. I have all these questions of like,
that's okay.
We missed it. We missed the support group. My one question.
That's the thing. I want to make sure we answer your questions. You did just ask if people are able to rebuild trust and safety.
Yeah.
Safety and
the safety and trust. You know, you mentioned like, how would, you know, and I'm going to ask this question. I know it's different for everyone, but I can imagine some of the people listening to the show, like, how long does it take? It's different for everybody. I'm going to make a guess, right? But is it possible to regain that? You know, you think about someone that you live with, someone that you might even have children with, that you lived with for so many years, and you think, we'll be together forever. And then you find out there's a porn addiction. They've been, again, we were talking before the show about people that have, you know, have prostitutes on the side, or that have just had an affair with someone at work or a neighbor, whomever. How do you rebuild that trust? Give us some ideas. Like, first of all, can you feel safe with that person again? And then give us some ideas on how you do that. Yes, Duane.
I think that is a great question, because that's one of the number one questions we get. Can we survive this? Can we get through this? And Marnie and I both believe and have seen that as it is a real possibility. And it does happen. And in some ways, many relationships actually, when they go through this process, and it is painful and it's difficult, I don't want to say, oh, you just do it, come out with actually deeper and richer relationships.
Yep.
And working in this field for the amount of time that we have, is we've been able to see that. We've been able to see relationships thrive through this. But I will add a caveat to that. It is a lot of work. And you need help to do it, to understand. First, you bring up 2 points: trust and safety, right? And in some ways, those are separate. But in one way, when we think about trust, there's in a way kind of a simple formula for the person who has betrayed the relationship if they want to rebuild it. Mm-hmm. And that formula is consistent, noticeable, trustworthy behaviors mm-hmm. over time will rebuild trust and safety, right? Mm-hmm. So when they do that, when the person who's done the betrayal starts to invest in doing that, right, they start to create a sense of safety. With that sense of safety comes a sense of trust. I trust that I am in a safe space. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is we get a little deeper. What are noticeable, consistent, trustworthy behaviors, right? And how do we create those, and what do those look like for a person who's done the betrayal and for the person who is the victim of that betrayal, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And that's where, helping couples heal comes in. Professionals come in because it can help guide that process.
Mm-hmm. Marnie, did you have anything you want to add to that? Oh,
you're muted, Marnie.
You're muted.
That is such a that Zoom thing from this year with the pandemic, the fact that you have to tell people over and over they're muted, that's going to be a big joke and meme for a very long time. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I was going to say something similar to Duane. So trust really can't be rebuilt without the safety. So a big mistake, in our opinion, that happens is, again, well-intentioned therapists who might not be specialists or truly understand the complex systems around betrayal trauma might try to help a couple that come in after the discovery of betrayal and try to help them get close and connected. Yeah. Right. Try to encourage vulnerability. And that's a huge mistake because, to be honest, there's no reason for the partner to trust the person who's betrayed her at that point. She has no reason to trust and no reason to think that that's not still going on, right? Because in their mind, I never thought this would have happened before. Now that I know it did, how
it blows their mind. Yeah, for sure.
It blows their mind. And so really, even though they desperately want to reconnect and be close to the person that hurt them, because that person is their primary attachment,
mm-hmm. Exactly.
figure.
Exactly.
But to help a couple try to be close and connected and to help them bond before the safety has been established is, in my opinion, a really big mistake and can cause further trauma and can make later repair much more difficult.
Yeah.
But to answer your original question, absolutely. If a person who has betrayed their partner is willing and wanting to do the very hard work of healing the relationship, yes, I have seen incredible stories of healing. And as Duane said, even going on to have really incredible relationships.
I don't work primarily with couples, but I've done some couples over the years of my practice. And a good number of the couples that I've worked with, I have to say, excuse me, their relationship got better.
Yeah.
Like we cracked them open and then kept talking, obviously we're talking, but really went deep into where did this come from? Like, let's talk about how this even happened to begin with. And in the end, I'm thinking about a few couples off the top of my head right now. They've actually gotten better and they've come together stronger than ever, but they both did their own work. Do you find that quite a bit with your business?
Well, I would say this. When one of the things that we do in this model, which is a little bit different in the helping couples heal model, is that we really believe in the relational component.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how that looks like in the beginning, as Marnie said earlier, we're not bringing people together to bond right away because safety and trust has to be built first.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do is we bring couples together to build what we call a scaffolding, which is a structure of safety to have the safe behaviors so that once that safety is established, and that takes some time, especially when maybe the betrayed partner has been blindsided by all this. They've been in a 30-year marriage, and all of a sudden they realize, oh my gosh, this isn't what I thought it was, which is devastating and really destroys a person's whole concept of where they are in the world, right? So once we repair that, then and we establish that basic level of trust and safety in the relationship, there can then come a point where people start to go into the history of how this happened. But what we find, if we do that too early, they're not ready to be able to do it. They don't have the structure and safety to do that. And we have to repair the betrayal trauma first before we can repair each other's attachment trauma.
Yes, Marnie.
And that's about the coupleship and the work of the couple, exactly what Duane just said. But in addition to that, in addition to sort of that crisis management and the scaffolding that he's talking about, it is really important for both partners to come in and do work. However, the work does look different for a partner than, at least according to our model and how we work, than maybe some traditional models. Mm-hmm. We do believe that the person who's done the betraying needs to come in and seek help. And first of all, behaviorally, stop the behavior. Yeah. So get support around that. Figure out what's going on. Is it a sex addiction, or is this somebody who's just made poor choices, or is it entitlement, right? Sexual entitlement, what's going on? And then they, of course, need to get treatment to look at that and figure it out and make sure it doesn't happen again, right? Mm-hmm. And then also learn about what they've done to their partner, how they've traumatized the relationship. There's so much work that person's going to do. And then for the partner, she's coming in hemorrhaging. Like Duane said, this is an existential crisis and an attachment trauma for the partner. And all systems of meaning have been shattered. Mm. And so what she needs in those early days is education about what's going on, about the behavior, but also, like Duane said before, her nervous system, what's happening in her own brain. Why is she suddenly hypervigilant? Why isn't she sleeping? Why is she asking the same questions over and over and over again, right? Why doesn't she feel safe in the world? Why doesn't she trust her friends when her friends have always been trustworthy, right? Why isn't she trusting herself when she has no reason not to trust herself? So getting an understanding and conceptualizing what her experience is a huge part of her early work. And then learning about what treatment's going to look like and getting a lot of support and validation and empathy and compassion and someone to talk to. So that's really her work. We do not buy into the concept of a partner coming in who's been betrayed, and then we open the door and say, well, tell us all about your childhood, you know, and look at, how did you get into a relationship with someone like that did this to you? Let's talk about your role in this, right? Why you chose this person. We don't go there. If that's something that comes up down the road and the person says, I have a history of choosing people that cheat on me over and over again, then of course we can look at that. Absolutely. But again, when they walk through the door, their work really is about helping them heal this existential trauma that they're experiencing, and to try to do some trauma resolution, because they really are in the midst of this complex PTSD.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And you guys have mentioned a few of these signs or symptoms of betrayal trauma. Are there any others? I know you'd said like your brain is racing all the time. You feel like you can't trust your friends. You're not sleeping well. What are the other signs? Like, how would someone know that they're in betrayal trauma? What's going on in their life? Duane?
Oh, sure.
Well,
I feel like I'm in school and I'm calling on you. Duane, okay. Your turn.
I told you we're so passionate. We can't stop. Okay, go ahead, Duane.
We break it down to 6 dimensions, right? Okay. Which comes out of Omar Minwalla's work. And, we're looking at what we call the shattered self. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Which is, this is, I thought my world was this way. And now what happens when we get information that changes everything, it's like the idea of the world, it's like a mirror and it breaks and all these pieces fly all over the place, right? So that's one thing that now someone has to cope with. Another one is life crisis, right? All of a sudden this happens, right? Now I got to figure out how to get treatment. I got to figure out how do I take care of the kids. If we have kids, I've got to think about therapy. I got to think about the cost of therapy. I got to think about the treatment. So we have this life crisis. What do I do? Where do we live? Do we stay together? Do we not stay together?
What do we tell the kids?
What do we tell the kids? What do we tell the friends?
What do you say to the kids? Yeah.
Then we look at the existential crisis. What happens is when all of that is challenged, it's like your whole place in the world, in the universe, is now rocked. And you don't know where your place is anymore when this happens. We also look, because it is an intimate betrayal, we look at sexual trauma, right? I think we were talking earlier before we started recording, like Marnie was saying, here is a partner who's trying to have a sexual relationship with their partner, and they don't know their partner's so involved in pornography that that's what's keeping them away. And they're asking themselves, what's wrong with me? Maybe they don't find me attractive, maybe they don't love me anymore, whatever it is. Maybe I can't compete with pornography or prostitutes or whatever it is. That causes even more trauma. What else is there, Marnie? I know I got 4 of them. What were the other ones?
You said
relational trauma.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the trauma of someone who when they have an addictive process around sexuality, they have to keep that hidden, right? If they're betraying, they have to keep that secret. That behavior of keeping that secret has its own damage. So there you get gaslighting, right? Oh no, I'm fine. What are you talking about? No, I was at work, but wait, I saw on your phone you were over at this other place over there. No, that's all wrong. You're not seeing it right? So you have gaslighting, manipulation, and that creates its own set of damage, right? So you have all these dimensions that come together that then impact this whole thing. And this is how this gets complex quickly, right? And it's just not.
What you had mentioned relational trauma, and then you started talking actually about the gaslighting, which we refer to really as emotional trauma. And it's all that stuff, the gaslighting, the deceit, the hiding all those secrets, all of that behavior is what creates what Duane was saying as the relational trauma. Right. So how could you have a situation where somebody is living this double life and lying and being deceptive and manipulative, and then the relationship's not damaged, right? Like that, you can't. So the relational trauma is that last piece. But I'll tell you 2 things in addition to that really can tell a partner that they are that they're having the experience of betrayal trauma.
Mm-hmm.
One is the really increased sense of hypervigilance, that idea of I need to know everything, not being able to, like we said before, slow the brain down, asking a million questions over and over and over, even after getting the same answers over and over and over. Looking at credit card receipts, looking at phone bills, all of these things, which some people can say, well, that's really, that person's overreacting. No, they're not. They're desperately seeking safety. And the brain is telling them, right, they're not safe. So that hypervigilance is their desperate way of trying to find a sense of safety. So that's one of the biggest symptoms, in my opinion. And the second one, which is not talked about enough, is the shattering of one's second brain, what we call the second brain, really, which is our gut instinct. It's our ability to trust ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so important, because we need to, if we're in danger, if we're walking in, if I'm walking somewhere and it's dark and there's no lights and I'm by myself and I hear footsteps, let's say, I'm going to probably trust my gut when it says run or walk faster, seek safety, right? But when somebody damages their relationship with their gut instinct, then they may not trust themselves. And our gut instinct saves our lives. It literally could be life or death. So for a partner who over years has been gaslit by the person that has betrayed them, and they've a lot. Now, listen, I'm going to say there's definitely partners that will report they never had one sign, one red flag, one reason to believe that there was betrayal. But there's many partners that will say, I never thought it would have been this, but I did think something was wrong. And 20 years ago, I remember asking, is something going on? Are you having an affair? Right? And over the course of years, it's been denied. And they end up believing the unbelievable. And then they find out after all this time, oh my God, I was right. And so the damage to that second brain is really significant. And so I do want to say that as like a symptom someone can look for, am I really in this state of hypervigilance? And am I not trusting myself? Am I really not able to trust myself? And that's that feeling of sort of not knowing who I am anymore. Like, if I can't trust me, what can I trust? And that leads to depression and all sorts of just awful symptoms for the betrayed partner.
How often is someone off? I'm just curious. How often? I'm just wondering. Because what I'm hearing you say is like, please trust your gut. Don't stop trusting yourself. So do you hear this often, you guys, where people are saying, oh my God, like you said, I had this thought 20 years ago. I had this thought 10 years. I had this thought 5 years ago. And he told me no, or she told me no, and I just disregarded. And then they're gaslit and all of this. Do you find that happens most of the time?
I would say yes, because that's the only way you can keep this secret life hidden.
Yeah.
It's through that. It's through that gaslighting, and then also I would encourage partners, because they can be so hard on themselves to go, oh my gosh, I should have known.
Yeah, I missed it.
And I really have to say, you have to be self-compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be kind to yourself. You chose to trust somebody, and that says something about you.
And our nature is to trust the person that we're living with, for God's sake. Like, we should be trusting these people. That's given. So yeah,
it's a given.
Yeah.
So you did the right thing in a way. You did the right thing. And it's like, really be kind to yourself, because partners out there they can be so hard on themselves, and they can beat themselves up for not seeing it, for not noticing it, for not, not paying attention to it. But it's really, just be kind to yourself.
That's such a great point.
Believing. Also, Michelle, believing, there are times, like I'm thinking about a couple I'm working with now, and the discovery happened, maybe a year ago or so, but they shared with me in therapy that there was another discovery maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago. And at that time, he promised it'll never happen again. I will never do this. They, repaired and healed, saw a therapist. And she thought all this time everything was okay. So when this discovery happened about a year ago, this last discovery, she has been totally caught up in, how could I be so stupid? So much anger with herself. And again, the idea is, but aren't we supposed to trust the person that we are spending our life with, who we trust we trust our children with, our money, our lives, right? That's the definition. When you think of attachment, it's like we are literally wired for attachment. We are wired to connect. And in order to connect, we have to be able to trust, right? We have to.
Such a good point. Do you find that, I'm just curious if there's research on this, is there a certain type of person that you would say that has affairs or that creates this betrayal? And yes, Duane.
Well, I think when we look at like sexual compulsivity, or if you want to call it sex addiction, out of control sexual behavior, whatever you want to call it, usually there is some history of early attachment trauma and wounding, which then manifests in their adult life, and sex has become a primary way of coping with internalized distress, right? So that's usually what we're seeing, right? But this is the hard work for the person who's done the betrayal. They have to repair the betrayal trauma that they caused if they want to keep the relationship. They have to do that first, right? And at the same time, work on their own internal wounding around this behavior. But we see that a lot, and usually there's some attachment wounding in that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 99% of the people and the couples that come through, the partner who's done the betrayal has so much remorse. It sounds strange to say this, but they really do care about their partner,
Mm-hmm.
and they want the relationship, yet they have struggled with this secret addiction, right? That it's manifested itself in this way and hurt the very people that they care about the most. And so, that part has to be addressed as well. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it really does. I remember I took a for my continuing ed for my counseling license like 20 years ago, like a long time ago, before all this research was out. Nobody was talking about attachment trauma. But I remember my takeaway was one of the reasons that people have affairs is not because, they're at work with a hot woman and they want to have sex with a hot woman. It's the emotional connection that they feel to and with that other person. It's more emotional based than physical. And that was my biggest, I remember after like a 2-day intensive thing on affairs, I was like, it's fascinating. There was all this research again, just on the emotional connection. And again, no one talked about attachment trauma back then, but it goes for me when I'm listening to you guys, I'm like, this is just attachment stuff going on, right?
It's so much based in attachment. And the other thing is that the majority of people who are engaging in betrayal behaviors,
mm-hmm.
as Duane said, there's trauma. There's some history of trauma. Often there's abandonment trauma. And that leads to obviously really low feelings of self-worth. And so for many of these people, truly, they are on a constant quest for external validation. Make me feel better. Make me feel better. I can never feel good enough. Nobody can make me feel good enough. So, again, with helping a partner understand this, often the partner asks, what could I have done different? Was I not enough? And it's really about educating that that's the problem. That's why the person who did this needs the help, right? Needs to come in and get help and figure this out, because it doesn't matter who was there, who was the intimate partner. That doesn't matter, right? Nothing can fill up that well enough.
Yes, Duane.
Add this too, for a lot of the people who have done the betrayal, these affairs and these relationships are constructed in a way that doesn't actually threaten their primary attachment. It sounds kind of crazy, but when you understand attachment trauma, the people that we love the most, if we have attachment trauma, are sometimes the scariest to attach to, because we want that attachment, right? And so these affair relationships, relationships with sex workers or whatever are constructed in such a way that they don't threaten that primary attachment, and that fantasy can help them shore up that attachment wound in a way that doesn't threaten them as a primary relationship would. So it's really, you have to be able to understand that. But once again, I don't want that to overshadow the betrayal trauma that the partner goes through, because we have to go back to that, because they're in acute crisis and that has to be held first. Yes, there will be room to help the person who's done the betrayal, but we got to help the partner who's been hurt. And in this is what's kind of also crazy, as the person who's done the betrayal really starts to help their partner heal, the person they've hurt themselves, they actually repair themselves at the same time. They actually start to feel better about themselves. And so helping the person who's done the betrayal learn the skills necessary to improve their partner's life, to the person who's been betrayed, it helps everybody, right?
Interesting. Really interesting. Well, I had a question. What's the difference between repeated infidelity and a one-time affair? What's the difference when it comes, Marnie? You want
to? Well, repeated infidelity can be just that, repeated infidelity by somebody who doesn't value honesty, or maybe grew up in a home where, infidelity was common, or, it could be a choice. It could also be evidence of a sex addiction or out of control sexual behavior. I couldn't say right off the bat if multiple or repeated infidelity means sex addiction, because definitely doesn't always mean that. Right. And one time, that's a tough one. If something is happening one time, it likely is not a sex addiction, right? Because the addiction piece is about the compulsivity and the repeated pattern. And that could mean a lot of different things. I will say that for the intimate partner who's been betrayed, it's not going to matter that much like how many times it happened, who the person was with. It is so painful. The outcome for the partner is really the same, regardless of it being repeated or one time. Now, I'm sure if there are people listening here who have been cheated on many times, they're probably thinking, no, it's got to be a lot worse. Like, I would give anything if it was just one time. Yeah. Right. But for the person who it is just one time, for them, they never would have wanted it to be one time or expected that. And that's still as much of a shock to them, as much of a contradiction to them of their core belief, which is, this person's going to keep me safe. This person has my back, right? Yeah. So again, the reason that someone might have a one-off affair can vary so much from person to person. Somebody might just really fall in love with somebody, right? Or just be so attracted to somebody that they can't control themselves. Or someone might be drunk or on drugs, right? And not in control of their ability to make decisions. Some people, there's just so many different reasons somebody would choose. Oh, sometimes I've heard, well, my partner has been so busy with the kids or with their business, and I felt neglected and ignored, right? And of course, instead of talking to them and saying, listen, this is how I'm feeling, we need help, this has to change, there's, a one-time affair. And sometimes that is the wake-up call. They're happy, like, oh, it did get my partner's attention, right? So I'm just throwing out all these different scenarios to say that we can't kind of put a label on or understand what's going on if we just use that term, like multiple infidelities. We don't know what that means. We really have to do a thorough assessment to find out, what's going on with all clients that come in.
Don't you think that when couples get together, they really need help? We all need help. Like, there isn't a manual. We need a manual for couples, because, we don't have a lot of good, we need the Bible for relationships, because I realize we come together with all of our wounding and we attract that perfect person. And you know what? I've realized this over and over again. We don't know how to communicate in a healthy way with other people. I don't care if you're in a romantic relationship with them, if it's your sister, your mother, your brother, I don't care who it is. We need to learn how to communicate, so that if you're then in a relationship with an intimate partner and something's going on inside, you just talk about it. Like, can we just at least talk about it? And I realize probably a lot of these affairs, and we might put you out of business.
That's
right?
fine.
If we could just teach people, really, I'm going to go to my work. How do you live in your adult chair? Like, how do you learn how to live as a healthy adult where you communicate effectively, where you live with presence, where you're vulnerable, where you learn how to speak about really what you're feeling? We don't know how to do that well. We need that. As humans, I don't care what color you are. I don't care if you're black, you're white, you're what religion you are. Humans need this.
And I mean, it's incredible to me that our kids in school are getting more information about, subjects that they're never going to need to know. And they're not learning how to effectively communicate. They're not learning how to solve problems, right? How to repair conflict, or resolve
stress
conflict.
reduction. How about stress reduction? How about, hey, this is what anxiety is. These kids have no idea, but yet they're graduating with all their AP and honor classes.
Yeah.
Who the heck cares?
I know.
Because you know what? They're going into the world as dysfunctional little human beings. And they go off to college, and then they're getting into relationships, or not go to college. I don't care. You're 18, you leave the house. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing in relationships. I don't know how to be, I hear about these kids. I'm going to use the word kids, like 18 plus, that are showing up to work late, talking back to their bosses. I'm like, what is going on here?
They say that this is the generation of entitlement. That's what I hear.
Think? Yeah, like huge. Anyway, well, that's a whole other show. I could go off on that, but let me just say.
And I have to say this to that point, and then
please do. Please.
But literally yesterday, I went and met with a preschool for my son, who's 3 and going to be starting preschool in a few months, and I was blown away by the woman who was giving me the tour. I mean, it looked like a lovely facility, but the emphasis on academics, and I know that there are people listening who are going to think that's how it should be. And I get that. I have a different feeling about it. I kept asking, what do you do when the kids are fighting or arguing? How do you teach them how to resolve conflicts? Do you talk about feelings, right? Like, what do you do when they're having big feelings? I'm so much less interested in the academia, especially at this age, because when they don't learn these things, like you said, they're going to then go through their life and they don't have the necessary skills to be in relationship with people.
Exactly. I have almost a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old. And I remember when my 23-year-old was in high school, so he's 17, 18, and his guy friends would come over, and then they came over throughout college. But I would sit, being a therapist and a coach, I love to talk about this stuff with all these kids, right? So I'd get them in a group, a pod, and we'd all start talking. So many of them had no idea they were dealing with anxiety. Oh, that's anxiety. This is what's going on with me. I'm like, that's just anxiety. I remember I blew their minds when I said, what you're experiencing, that self-talk, is called an inner critic. And they were like, we all have that? I'm like, yes. Wouldn't that have been great if they had learned that in middle school or high school? Like, I'm educating these kids, and they were so blown away. They thought it was just them. And I mean, if we can educate these kids younger with all of these things, this is what anxiety feels like. This is what depression feels like. This is OCD. This is, you're in a critic. God, everyone feels like they're a fraud at some point. It's normal.
One of the things that I love, talking about that, and what I see is about the work that we do as people move through it, right? And they work on themselves. Their children, even if they have adult children, benefit from this work that they do. And that's one of the things I love about the work that we do and that you do. You help one person. You just don't help that one person.
No,
you help all the people they have a relationship with, and you give them that emotional intelligence to respond. And that just kind of flows down. And it's such a beautiful thing to see in the work that we do. Even with all of that trauma and heartache and hardship, there is beauty at the other side. It's work to get there, but it's worth the investment. It's worth doing these things.
I have a question for you guys. So what is your success rate with couples? 2 couples, they really want their relationship to work. Excuse me, 2 people that really want their relationship to work. If they're all in, what's your success rate? Yeah.
If that is the case, they are really all in and willing to do the work, and it's a lot of work, I think that the success rate is very high. It's really when there is a lot of resistance or stonewalling or denial on the part of the person who's done the betrayal, and they're not willing to do the work. They're not willing to acknowledge the abuse, the trauma that it's caused on their intimate partner, and perhaps on other family members too, and other people in their lives. That's when it really doesn't work. And I'll tell you, partners are loyal. They stick it out. They try to stay for years. I mean, Duane and I have a Facebook group that we manage for couples dealing with this. And I can't tell you how many partners are posting in there that have been married for, over 30 years. And they've been dealing with this for anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 years. And they are still in it. And so only to say that they don't give up easily, right? The people that I have worked with and that I see, they really try, but the relationships cannot heal. They cannot be repaired without not just the willingness, but the commitment from the one who's done the betrayal to repair and to stick around as long as it takes.
What do you say to the couple that comes in and you clearly can see the stonewalling, the gaslighting, the blaming going on? I hate using labels, but I'm just going to say that someone that's displaying more of serious narcissistic tendency or traits. Do you ever just say like, you're done here? Because I've seen that a couple times where it's like, honey, you're trying a lot harder than he is. I think we're just done here. Do you find that happens quite a bit? What's your take on that?
I believe we make it visible and we say it, and the partner who's been betrayed, setting those boundaries. If you don't do the work, I'm not here. And at some point they have to say that and stick to that. And for some people who have a lot of narcissistic wounding, sometimes that boundary, really hard boundary, is what's going to shift it.
Mm-hmm. And wake them up. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel bad for the partner who's been wounded, now has to set this hard boundary. It kind of sucks, but sometimes that's what it takes. And when the person really has that wounding, when the person really has that boundary, then they go in and they start to jump in and do the work. And sometimes that's what it takes. And if that person is not willing after that, then maybe that partner may have to leave that relationship.
I mean, you got to want it equally, I would think.
Yeah.
And I see that where one partner wants it so much, they want that relationship to work. I'm like,
Well, sometimes the person who's betrayed their partner does want the relationship to work. They do love this person. They do want it to work. But truly, in the end, they aren't willing to do the intense amount of work that it takes. They cannot continue to answer the same question over and over again, right? They can't deal with the shame that comes up every time their partner is triggered, so they might not even choose to leave. This is actually a frustrating dynamic that we see, is that often the one who's done the betrayal, who is not really doing the work, is still not just saying, I'm going to leave, is still not communicating in a way that's saying, I don't want to hurt you anymore. I'm not willing to do what's being asked of me. Instead, we often see the opposite. I'm doing everything that, I'm in this group, I'm in that group, I'm doing this. How long do you want me to do this? And, so it's sort of continual gaslighting on some, to some degree. But I think that I would, by the way, to answer your other question, I would tell somebody, if I'm working with with the person who's done the offending behavior, who's done the betrayal, and they are in a place of, what's the word? Whether they're stuck in their, grandiosity or narcissism, denial, sort of minimizing the partner's experience, not taking full responsibility, I will say to them very clearly, you might as well leave the relationship, because this kind of stance is not going to be what's necessary for your partner to heal. There's no way she's going to heal. And if she doesn't heal, the relationship won't heal. So I'm very clear and very direct. I tell people as soon as they walk in the door what to expect, in terms of what this path is going to look like. But I will also say that in the early stages, I have seen some people that look like they will never be able to do what they need to do to repair. They just, if you ask me in that first or second session, I'd be like, there's no chance. God, I wish I should just tell the partner to leave. But something in me tells me, don't say anything. You can't say anything. You don't know. And I have been proven wrong many times. So I do want to say that it's really, people can change, people can heal. I would never do this work. This work is so painful, right? There's so much pain. And I wouldn't do it if I didn't see these incredible stories of healing, and transformation.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I love that. Thank you guys again for the work that you're doing. It's so needed. Where can people find you? If people want to work with you, where would they go?
I think the best thing to find us is just go to helpingcouplesheal.com.
Okay.
And we're all there. Also, both Marnie and I have our own centers. They can find me at novusmindfullife.com and Marnie.
And I'm at the LACRH.com. My company is in LA and San Diego, and it's called the Center for Relational Healing. Yeah, so LACRH.com. And also Duane and I co-host a podcast called Helping Couples Heal, which is essentially a resource for people to deal with exactly what we've been talking about with you, Michelle, today.
Awesome. And again, all of this will be in the show notes for people listening. Not to worry. If you're driving, don't pull over. Don't get in a car.
Right. Don't do that.
Well, it will all be in the show notes. Okay. Well, gosh, you guys, thank you so, so much for your work and for sharing all of your wonderful knowledge with us today. We appreciate you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for giving us a platform to talk about something that really is so meaningful to us.
Yeah, you can tell. I can tell you guys, you're in your passion in your careers. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.